One of the most iconic parts of Frieren Beyond Journey's End is randomly dropping into jaw-dropping, fantastic animated sequences that go way too hard for seemingly no reason. If you've watched this show, you can probably point to many examples. Did Stark putting on a jacket need to be animated this well? No, or at least not at the time, because that's the really interesting thing about all of this. What once was shocking now is an expectation. Frieren is a show with immense commercial and critical success, and the things that once differentiated it have now become an expectation. Stuff like consistent and overwhelming quality that occasionally dips into so much more. So I've been waiting for those moments to reappear in Season 2, and I think they finally delivered. Welcome to Season 2 of Exploring Frieren. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about when a director runs away with the scene. One of the central components of Frieren Season 1's success was its director. Keiichiro Saito has been a personal favorite anime director of mine since I was first introduced to him with Sunny Boy, later an all-time favorite in Bocchi the Rock, and finally Frieren Season 1. People might not be aware, but Saito stepped back going into Frieren's second season. In multiple interviews, he stated that he felt like he overworked himself. As far as I understand, the reason he was able to work on Frieren is because he stepped away from Bocchi the Rock for similar reasons: overwork, burnout, and concerns of meeting those high expectations. I believe Saito was a fundamental part of why Frieren was as good as it was, not only in his title as director, but also in the proof of his previous work. He has so much directing style, and I think that's been made a little bit more apparent with Frieren's second season. In Saito's stead, Tomoyo Kitagawa, a close collaborator on the first season, has taken over as director for the second. Pretty consistently, changes in directors, especially for stylized projects, are noticeable. Directors are in charge of storyboarding and oversee a network of animators below them. So literally their style bleeds into all of their work. This is present in the scenes where they're adapting the manga pretty closely, but more so in the scenes where they have to create something in between. And like I said previously, those moments in between the manga panels are a distinct part of what makes the anime so special. I have a whole video I'm working on built around the noticeable mistakes or changes in Frieren's second season. I think there have been some small and noticeable problems that don't feel reminiscent of Frieren and its pristine quality, but that's not really the focus of today. What I want to highlight is the exact inverse, tapping into something fantastic, a fundamental part of this show's style and tone. Its ability to create these brief and overwhelmingly grandiose moments where you least expect them. So here's a soft spoiler warning up to Season 2, Episode 5 of Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Buckle up, chat. It's time to dive in. It's not uncommon for anime that's really spectacular to have a standout scene or episode, a beautiful exception to what you're expecting. I've made a couple videos talking about examples of this, like Episode 7 of Dandadan's first season, or the beach episode from My Dress Up Darling. Occasionally there's beautiful scenes where you least expect them, functioning as a fantastic moment stepping away from what you would expect from a series before it eventually returns to what it's known for. These shocking and outstanding scenes are often exceptions, but I think with Frieren they've become an expectation. Normally these moments function as a kind of counterpoint, working as a juxtaposition to whatever the show's established itself as, often deeply emotional moments in the face of comedy or action. With Frieren, it's also a counterpoint, but in the opposite direction, one that's a lot less common. Intense action sequences involving inhuman strength or fantastic magic in an otherwise peaceful show. One of my favorite pieces of advice I've held on to for a long time that I can't remember the source of was the idea that if something's good enough that you want to linger on it, that's the most important time to let it be brief. When people stumble upon something pretty magical in creating a story, they often want to stay there as long as they possibly can, but that can undermine its effectiveness. Great creators seem to give it just as much time as it needs, which is often a lot less than you'd expect. And it's a skill that Frieren demonstrates time and time again, allowing something fantastic and amazing to be there just a moment. And that's how I feel about these scenes from Episode 5. It's just so beautiful and arguably unnecessary. In the original manga, there's just a single panel of smoke demonstrating this spell, but someone in adapting the anime, likely the director, decided to make it so much more. I've been waiting for something like this to really hit in the second season. The closest example I can think of was the flashback fight to the hero's party versus the dragon in the first episode. The scene was awesome. But outside of that, a lot of the strong scenes in Frieren's second season either have significant emotional impact or are pretty impressive, not hitting the same peaks that I associate with the first season. That's what I love about this low-stakes random spell Frieren casts in a cave to find silver. Imagine being one of those miners and experiencing that firsthand. There's something so cool about it that adds to the legend and world building of Frieren's universe. An interesting thing about this video too is I don't really think season 2 episode 5 of Frieren was one of its strongest. This show so often makes me deeply emotionally invested in things I didn't think I would care about, but this episode to me was kind of the opposite. The ideas were more interesting than the execution. Foss was fine, but in comparison to the story with Old Man Vol, I got so much more invested in one. Maybe it's the similarity in title or the fact that they're both dwarves, but this episode was good, not really great. But that scene, that was great. And I've missed that feeling of being blown away by something Frieren did. It's a moment that makes me go, really? It's just a spell for finding silver? To go so hard at times where you least expect it is not only just really fun, but it also ties into the story at large, specifically the themes and tone. For me, a major component of what personally makes Frieren such an enjoyable show is the way it utilizes the feeling of realism, but not too much. Stories are built around this concept of suspension of disbelief, and to maintain that suspension, you need an internal consistency and logic. Now, realism is not at all necessary to tell a good story. Often it actually gets in the way. Now, stories need to feel realistic, but that often has less to do with what realism actually is and more with that internal consistency and logic. Looney Tunes is fun because when an anvil falls on a character's head, it doesn't kill them. But it is refreshing in a world of stories built around the fantastic to have moments that feel incredibly grounded and realistic. In action shonen, I like that fight scenes last a long time. If every fight in an action shonen was incredibly brief, I think it'd make a much less compelling story. But fights, war, and conflict in reality often are incredibly brutal, random, and brief. When I was a student, I remember reading an article or work of fiction that was written by a former soldier who went into detail on the weird emotional experience of being at war. The mind-numbing boredom of what is largely mundane and monotonous, and then random, brief spikes of intense violence. War is an extreme example of this experience, but I think it extends beyond it. I don't know how many fights you guys have seen, but there tends to be a pretty uneven distribution of capability. Someone's more experienced or trained, which leads to a fight that doesn't last very long at all. High-stress situations are like this too. They seem to pass in the blink of an eye. An anime with great action obviously has an incentive to not make it super short. So tying this back into Frieren's cutaways, it's a beautiful mix of realism and exaggeration, and it feels very unique to the show, like I haven't seen it much in anime, let alone the fact that these scenes are just built to capture your attention and surprise you. The dynamics of it are made even more grandiose by these long periods of downtime, this slice of life feel that the show offers. But those brief action sequences that feel realistic to me are also incredibly balanced by the exaggeration that makes storytelling so compelling. Frieren's still a fantasy story, filled with characters who wield unfathomable strength or breathtaking magic. So we get this mix of exaggeration within these internal constraints and consistency against these brief action sequences that are animated at a world-class level, and that's kind of the beauty of these decisions. You can't just do this in any story. It fits really beautifully with what Frieren's manga already offered, and it's become a distinct part of the show's tone, used repeatedly to enhance the fantastic themes and characters that the show's already introduced. I think it's awesome, and it's especially cool that it's back. I was nervous we might lose it. What a fantastically directed scene that feels so true to an initial decision that makes this show so special. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go check out the other 5 I've done in this series so far, or come back next week.